Yeah, we can do this. Let's go. Let's go. Warm up done. So, hola guys, welcome to this new video. Today I'll be working on Ableton Live. I have a very interesting activity for you. We're gonna work on a template. Many friends, people I know, have been asking me, "Oh, what about your templates? Do you use any templates, or do you start from scratch?" Every time you approach a track, an idea, do you think from scratch, from zero, or do you have a starting point? And the answer is sometimes I go from zero, but sometimes I use my template. I have a template that I've been building for some time, and in those situations where I'm starting from zero, the result ends up being 99%, 95%, let's say, the same. Like I always end up with the same setup, and I don't know if this is the best setup in the world. I'm not sure if this is the setup you need, but it's been giving me good results consistently, and I just enjoy working on it. I don't find any flaws or something that, I wish that this could be possible. I wish I could compare this. There are no scenarios where I feel like I'm missing something, but that's why we have YouTube, and that's why we have this space of discussion and friendly criticism. Let's do it. Let me show you what I have and let me know what you think. Let's get into it. Okay guys, let's go. Let's get into it. So one little note, something really important I want to tell you. This is stock plugins only. We can add cool plugins later for enhancing the sound, which is the thing I do the most with third-party plugins. I use them for enhancing things or solving situations that would take way longer just by using stock plugins. But 80% of my work, I just feel comfortable with Ableton stock plugins. They're very good and they do pretty much everything. The compressors, the limiter is good, multi-band dynamics, everything's there. So stock plugins only. Let's go. So what you see here on my screen is the finished template. And we're gonna get here, hopefully. This is the second or third time I tried to rearrange this and do it from scratch, but we're gonna get here. This should be the final result. As you can see, not that many tracks. There's nothing crazy here. Should feel like a blank, fresh canvas ready to be filled in with information, cool beats, cool samples. You should have space and a place to put anything you want, to place any sample, any clip in within these regions, these groups. So let's do it. Whenever we press new live set or whenever we open Ableton, this is what we usually get. If you never set up a template, you're gonna get the default live set. Comes with 2 MIDI tracks, 2 audio tracks, 2 returns, and 1 master. We're going to delete 2 MIDI tracks for now, 1 of the audio tracks, change the name of this track to ref or reference, and we're gonna send the audio to the external out, assuming you're using an audio interface. Why do we do this? Because we don't want the audio, this track, to go through all the processing in the master chain. And the purpose of this track is to just play clips. If you want to store things here, let me remove this section. We can keep clips here, load them from the browser, and we're just gonna listen to this as a reference. These are reference tracks. This is not stuff that you want to include in your song. This is just for you to keep your samples on that side and say, oh, this is what I used today. You know, these are the samples loaded. These are the ideas. These are the references, pretty much. And remember, pick a color here that you won't use for any of your regular tracks. For me, it's black. I like having this one black. I don't use black for any of the other tracks, and it's quite. It stands out a lot. Done. So we got a reference track. Remember, we have to mute this track and just press the solo button whenever we want to play any of the clips containing here. Why? Because we want to make sure that this never plays whenever we're making music. So that's important to notice. Then we can copy these same plugins, copy and paste them on the mix bus. Remember, the compression what you do here will depend on whatever sounds we route through it. So basically, if you have ads, if you have keyboards, if you have long-tailed, fast attack type of sounds, whatever you have to set up the compressor accordingly. But I recommend this compressor a lot. It's very good for musical buses, stuff with musical content, groove. If you want to correct things, if you want to sidechain, you'll see me add the other compressor. So basically that's the explanation. That's how I use both. Compression for something that requires removing artifacts or removing fast. This compressor is very fast, by the way. And the glue compressor is a bit slower, but the character and the behavior of this needle, it's just very musical and very pleasant to the ear. Remember to make sure you're not using too much OTT. I probably would go for 10% on the mix bus. Remember, all these keyboard synths, leads, everything except effects and drums will be here. I'll show you later how we route it, but for now let's leave the plugins active there. So these two are buses, bus tracks. Oh, and we actually want to call this one buses to general. Let's call this mix. I used to call this mix, but you can give it a different name. I'll show you how it works. You also have to pick a color that you like. I go for red and gray. I just like these two colors together for some reason. We'll have to route instruments here later, so I'm gonna do that once we finish the template, but these ones contain lots of sounds from the project and group sounds, you know? So these ones are going to process lots of information. For that purpose, we have to add the right plugins, which are, in my opinion, the Glue Compressor, EQ8, from Dynamics. You find the legendary OTT. It's amazing. This one is very useful, but I normally tone it down a little bit, and I go 10% wet, 12, 20, and I normally increase the time to make sure that it does a rather fast compression instead of something slow, especially on the drums bus. Yes, so this is what this punch bus contains. I pretty much use it for percussions, drums, drum hits like kick, snare, toms, and the bass, all of them together. And last one in this chain, utility plugin for the mono switch and be able to control the width. Never gain. I won't touch the gain here, it has to be 0, but I like actually changing this to mid-side mode and then going full mono or full side and listen to what's going on, and probably I would dial to the left and make sure I reduce stereo information in case there's some sounds that they're going too wide and I just want to control them, make them more consistent. This is very important, and you're gonna see this a lot in other tracks. Okay guys, that was the reference track. Now I'll remove my camera because you won't be able to see the plugins. I was actually recording with my camera there and I noticed just now. Okay, let's go. So the next thing I would do, adding two tracks. Oh, sorry. You're gonna have two audio tracks. 1, 2. Control T on PC. And I'm gonna name them punch and buzz with the hashtag so we can get a number. Remember, we're getting the number and the main groups are always in capital letters. Next, we're gonna add one MIDI track. This is what I use for drums. Drum racks, I really love them. Don't worry about the capital letters here, because this won't be the main. This is not everything we want. We actually want to add more tracks, have more possibilities with drums. So how to do that? Well, easy. First we need to add the drum rack here. Drum rack for all your samples. Then we selected the MIDI track and we press Ctrl G, PC, the equivalent in Mac, which I'm not sure, so it's better if you look it up. But yeah, we group this track and then this will become my drums group. Boom, capital letters. This is how we started. This is how we set it up initially. If you want to add more tracks, if you have more scenarios, or this is basically up to you, but I would add audio tracks or samples that I want to play or loops. Add another, for example, loops. It's an audio track, right? This MIDI track can be just for hats, let's say, or percussions. It can contain a drum rack. In that way we can worry about all the sounds and group them all together as a group. Now we just have to add plugins to the drums group. I like adding Redux, EQ8, drum bus, and utility. Redux for coloring the sound, EQ for fixing artifacts or areas that are getting too hot, drum bus for processing, compressing, and tightening the activity that, you know, all these three tracks will be active, and if in case we make mistakes, the compressor can help and can also color the sound, add more low end. And utility for the mono switch, for the mid-side mode, and never for gain. If we want to adjust gain, I would probably adjust it here in drum bus or the main fader for the group. So next, we're gonna generate another. It could be a MIDI track. Let's think of a synth. We have a synth here. Synth. This is the synth that plays chords in probably octave number 2 or octave number 3. We're gonna group it. Ctrl G. We're gonna call this low mid. Remember, anything that plays maybe notes, chords, but wherever the fundamental root resides in the second or third octave, that's the rule. This is for low mid frequency instruments, and generally I do this with synths, pianos, but it's up to you, of course. Think about what do you normally use, what's in your samples. If you're using samples, if you're sampling from vinyl records or whatever, just think about where the fundamental note resides. The fundamental is a piano, it's something that's playing like a low, dark chord. You're definitely gonna place this here, or say samples, for example. That sample would be placed, or that clip would be placed here. That synth would be playing a chord, and it would be group contained in here. These tracks, you would just edit them and play with them, do whatever you want. But the low mid The group has to be processed in a specific way. What I like doing is first having a glue compressor. And this is up to you, of course, whatever sound you're trying to achieve. If it's really bouncy, if you just want to get rid of the transients or the attack, you have to play with it. EQ8 for removing active artifacts or anything that could cause trouble. And many of us do this. I would do it as well. Control these areas because you don't want this to interfere with your bass. We try to make space, so this is good to this is a good practice. Specifically here after the compressor. Remember, this compressor is helping us understand what's going on with the tracks contained in the group. So here we can see basically this needle is gonna show us what's going on. Like if some of the instruments could be way higher in volume than others. So this is very good to see. I wouldn't do this because then we're missing the action. We want to see what's going on in here. And if one of the instruments has a very hard attack and it's affecting the needle, then you go in here and edit the instrument accordingly. For example, you can go in the sample section, probably remove low end. Yes. So basically, this compressor is here to help us figure out what's going on in the group and solve problems, and at the same time reshape the sound. You could add another one later. If you want a more dramatic effect, you could add another compressor later. This one would have a complete different setup, and basically everything from this point and forward, you can add stuff that enhances the sound, makes it sound cooler, more spacey. You can play with it, but the very last thing you want, you have to make sure you do this. If you like this type of production, of course, but if you use Sidechain, this is where I would place my Sidechain. Boom. And of course you have to set up Sidechain, trigger by any of the drums in the drums group, and this is where it goes. You don't want the sidechain to affect the sound previous to processing. You want to deal with the instruments, enhance them, and then sidechain them all together. And just to finish, utility, so you can do monitoring and mid-side. In case you have too much side, maybe one of these tracks is like heavy stereo content. So if you play with this, you're gonna start noticing that, oh, maybe this is clearer, this is something that I didn't notice, or maybe one of the tracks is standing out way too much. Play with things and then go in here and fix the problems. To try this again. That's a good practice. Okay, so that's low mid. Now we're gonna duplicate this group basically with Ctrl V. Change the color. Let's make it more bright. I like orange for these scenarios. And we're gonna rename it as HIMID. So what is the difference between these two? The type of instruments you include in the group. This could be a synth, but the synth could be a synth lead instrument. Let's make this one orange as well. Yes. We could add another MIDI track that has a sample, stack sample, for example. So octaves, I would say 3, more maybe in the 4th, 5th, 6th and on octaves. Maybe the 2nd and 3rd octaves mainly reside in low mid, but for high mid we want octaves 4, 5, 6. more bright, high-pitched content. And the only difference here, the compressors do the same functions, first fixing problems, enhancing the sound. Here I would probably go a bit more to the right. With this shelf. And this is a shelf, yeah. With this one, I would just try to catch this part of the spectrum and leave this one for low mid. And I'd be careful here. You have to be careful with your top end. But yeah, you get my concept. This one is for reshaping the sound in case you want something more bouncy. And the sidechain as well, triggered by the drums. And utility for the mono switch and mid-side monitoring or editing. And then we're gonna get into the very last track or group of tracks. Let's press Ctrl Z and create an audio track. This one I would always make white. This is my white track, and I like calling this effects 1, let's say. Yeah, crash, riser, laser guns, dialogues, and I'm gonna explain why. But first we have to group it the same way we did with the others, and we're gonna call this effects group. The group of effects. I normally load supply samples here and name them. Make sure you have the right name, like riser. This one could, what could this be? Laser gun, bubbles. There's so many cool effects that you can add. But this is important thing to notice. Here the processing is a bit not different, but the one thing I really have to worry about is where these effects go in the mix. As you know, well, as you can see, I place them on the far right because I want them, and I'm adding this EQ8 to the group, right? Of course, you can process any of this as you please, but within the FX group, effect chain, the first thing you want to know, want to worry about is making sure these effects, the fundamentals reside in this area of the spectrum. They're not really interfering with any low mid content mostly. And you also want them in sidechain accordingly. So we have sidechain at EQ8. You could add a compressor, glue compressor, but these ones should only be used for catching. For example, there's a preset that I like a lot. It's called Catch Picks. Of course, you have to set the threshold accordingly. But this one, the purpose or the goal here is just to be able to see if one of the effects is way louder than the others and balance that out. That's it for the effects group. I will leave reverb and delay. They already are. Maybe set it up the way you like it, but yeah, return tracks, that's up to you. But I usually have one reverb, one delay, and now let's get into the master track. So we're gonna add to the master track the following effects: glue compressor, utility, limiter, and spectrum plugin. So glue compressor can help us increase the level. I really like the mastering, make it loud. preset. It's very good for lifting volume in case you left. Sometimes I leave too much headroom here and I need to increase the volume of everything altogether. So this preset is great. Utility for the mono switch. I wouldn't touch this mid side here. Not with this plugin on the master chain. This is a no-no. For the gain, that should be fixed here with makeup and compression. So this is basically a mono switch. You can also make all the low frequencies mono. So I would leave this on and press the mono switch, you know, on and off, just to hear how's my mix in mono looking like. And we have the limiter. The only problem with the limiter is that it's introducing a little bit of latency, so I don't use it straight away. But if you use it in these very first stages of production, I would recommend just to go for look ahead 1.5 milliseconds option. Just not touch the gain and just see how much you're going far beyond the 0 decibel threshold. As well, we shouldn't be clipping, right? So we want to see here the activity of the limiter and figure out if our drums or bass is just clipping too hard. In the spectrum, always good to see if the frequencies, something is going crazy. Obviously there are better spectrum analyzers in the market, but if this is your only option, it's really good enough to have it. Always have it here, and you can solo whatever you want to solo. Go to the master track and see what's going on, you know, with that particular track. Okay, and that would be the template pretty much. There's one last thing that we have to do. We're gonna activate a section for inputs and outputs. We have to route these tracks to the buses. Remember, these second and third tracks we set up as buses, well, they wouldn't do anything because we haven't routed anything through them. So let's do it now. First step, we want the punch bus to contain all drum sounds and the bass. So how to do that? Well, we go to the drum tracks, we just go to audio 2 punch. Well guys, I just realized I forgot to add the bass, so we're gonna do it now. Very simple. Need a track next to the drums. Let's call bass. Oopsie. So here we add everything that's bass related. If you have a bass, add it next to the drums. But basically what you want is the bass to be routed to punch, and boom, punch bus needs to be monitored like this. And if you have anything in audio from, go for no input, because we don't want guitars or bass that are plugged to your interface making any noise here. So that's it. Same for mix. You're gonna route high mid, low mid, mix, but not the effects group. The effects group remains as routed directly to the master track. Remember, audio from, no input, monitoring, in. So drums and bass go to punch, low mid, high mid go to mix, FX group goes directly to the master. And that's it. I think we got it. All the groups are there: drums, bass, low mid, high mid, FX group as per the spectrum with their respective plugins. 2 buses to process drums and bass, all the mids, 1 track in a group for lasers and fun stuff that can enhance the sound, especially in the top end, and my basic plugins for master track with a reference track here, so we can add samples and compare, do A and B comparisons and stuff like that. Boom, back. So yeah, that was my template. That's how I built it. It was a bit sloppy because I forgot about the bass. Sorry about that. But I think you got the main idea, and I'm gonna leave here in the description a chart so you can build it. Try it out. Tell me what you think. Maybe my ideas about processing these groups together. For example, the mix bus. I'm not sure because I can see that people here on YouTube and professional producers and whatever, they have different idea of what a mix bus is. And I think my idea, it could be called mid bus, could be called differently. For me, the mix is basically all the stuff in the middle that's not being cut through transients, aggressive transients, which in my case, for the type of music I'm making, those are my drums. I'll probably try to take this template to its big level, like to its limits. I want to see what are the limitations of this setup, but so far I haven't found any, and I've been able to sidechain the mix bus in case you have vocals. Of course, I do instrumentals mostly, but whenever I have vocals, I can sidechain those vocals, or basically add a sidechain to the mix bus, triggered by the vocals, and then it gives me a nice effect, like all my synths go down in volume, but I don't lose intensity. I'll explain that in future videos, but there's so many little tricks that can be done with this setup and this division, this grouping setup. Hope you have a nice day making music, having fun, working. I'll be around. This is my second video of the week, so I'm very excited. I'm gonna get to a third one. I have more stuff for you, so stay tuned and subscribe, like my videos. Be nice in the comments. All good. Signing out. George CDS, tu amigo. Let's go.